All right, we're going to go ahead and start things off. So welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Waite. I'm with the Coalition for College, and thank you all for joining us today for Ask Us Anything About Admissions. Before we introduce our wonderful panelists, I'm going to share a few things with you about the Coalition for College. If you're not familiar with the Coalition yet, we are more than 170 colleges and universities with a shared and proven commitment to college access, affordability, and student success. And we believe that coalition schools make smart college choices because they are dedicated to graduating students on time and with low or no debt, including students who have been historically underrepresented in higher education. You'll find a lot of different types of schools among the coalition's membership, schools from across the country, and also schools with lots of different sizes, and also selectivity rates. We've got some of the most selective schools in our membership and also schools that admit the majority of the students who apply. And still across the coalition altogether, we graduate students at a rate that's about 15% higher than the national averages. And we think that graduation rates are a really important number for you to take a close look at because it's an indication of how much time and also how much money you're going to invest in your education. If you haven't heard yet, we launched a new application process with our partners at SCORE this past year. So students can create a free SCORE account and make use of their really great college search and discovery tools, and also work on applications in the process. So we think we've not just created yet another application, but really a better process because it helps students do more from one account in one place, starting with that college search through the application and then even tracking application progress after you've applied. And the application process still features the coalition fee waiver. If you don't know about our fee waiver process, the really great thing about it is that you only need to check a box to indicate that you are eligible for one of the criteria that we described there, and then not provide any additional documentation and be able to apply for free to coalition schools. And because this application method is only available to coalition schools, you can apply with confidence to those smart college choices. And if you haven't followed us on Instagram yet, we definitely invite you to do that. That's a great place to stay in touch with other events like this one that we have coming up. We'll be sharing our summer schedule soon. It's also a great place to learn about coalition schools and hear advice from the experts who are admissions officers at coalition schools. And speaking of those experts, we have a few with us tonight who are truly wonderful. And I'm going to invite them to go ahead and introduce themselves and also share just a little fun fact, something that they love about the schools that they're representing here today. So Chelsea, I'm going to ask you to lead us off.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Santiago. I'm an assistant dean and coordinator for access and equity at Occidental College. One thing that I really love and that is unique about Oxy is that we are a small liberal arts college, but we are located in the big metropolitan city of Los Angeles.
Thanks, Brandy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandy Fink. I serve as the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Experience at the University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas. And one of the things that I love about UIW, I want to talk about a tradition because I saw students today. We have a bell tower that you can walk underneath on campus that's right in the middle of most of our main academic buildings. And students go out of their way to make sure they do not walk under it because that is the tradition that's held for them to partake in at graduation. And it's really moving to watch them all finally walk under the bell tower at graduation.
Thanks for that, Brian.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Mizak. I'm the Director of Admission at St. Mary's College of Maryland, the National Public Honors College. We're located a little over an hour just outside of Washington, D.C. at the beautiful Chesapeake Bay. I think my favorite part of campus, besides the fact that I have some of the best and most enviable views of any office anybody could ever work at, is that my college has 2 beaches. And nothing makes me happier than to see students after they engage in their labs and coursework heading down to the beach in their bathing suits, flip-flops, and towels, just to go and relax and regenerate after a hard day's work.
Sounds great. Grace?
Hi, everybody. My name is Grace Chapin James. I am the Executive Director of Admissions at Washington University in St. Louis, which is located in St. Louis. I imagine that you were all saying it. So one of my favorite fun facts about WashU is that not only is our mascot the bear, But one of our alumna is the founder of the Build-A-Bear workshop. So we recently had one of our first admitted student programs on campus, and there may or may not have been Build-A-Bears that were custom for WashU as a giveaway for some of our visiting admitted students. So watch out, bears.
Great, thank you. So with that, we're going to launch into the Q&A portion, which is really what we're here to do. The Q&A function is turned on, so please ask your questions there throughout, and we will get to those. We did have some questions that were submitted in advance, so we'll go ahead and start with those. But I will say that we will be sharing the recording out of this session after the fact, which will have captions, including Spanish captions. So stay tuned to the email that you used to register for the event. So the first question that I want to ask came in advance, which is just a great question for any folks who are juniors or even sophomores on the call. Brandy, I'm wondering if you can share with us what your advice is for what students can do in that junior year to really start being prepared for college and college admissions.
Absolutely. So if you haven't done so already, I would encourage you to visit us. I have a lot of seniors come in their senior year and they are stressed out because they're trying to visit a lot of different universities to make their final decisions. And it should be an enjoyable experience. So come visit us, start engaging with us to understand what are my admission requirements for each institution that you're considering. Start working on those essays. It is never too early to start working on those essays. So I would just make sure that number one, go ahead and start visiting us is the most important, because that's how you're going to be able to see what is the right fit for me.
Thank you for that. Next question for Chelsea. How can I find a college that's the best fit? And what should I be looking for in that best fit?
Yeah, so this is definitely an interesting question. I think that a lot of times when students are looking for this best fit, and I like to use kind of more of like, where am I going to be most successful in? You don't want to just mold yourself into what you think this college is going to be this kind of best fit for you, but really think about what is important to you. So I definitely would take the time to do a lot of self-reflection, what has been important to you in your high school experience, thinking about location, big cities, small cities, thinking about sizes. Do I want to be in a sea of students and get to see new faces every single day? Or do I want to have a more tight-knit community? Maybe major is really important, making sure you do your research beforehand on these institutions to make sure they have what's available for you and what's going to be important for you to think about, where am I going to be most successful in? This is a school that checks off all these boxes, but like Brandy said, always getting on campus and really getting a sense of that school might also determine where you feel like you're going to be a great community member in as well.
Great answer. Brian, can you tell us, this is a very popular question, a big question, what do admissions officers value in college applications?
So I really love how this question actually follows Chelsea's answer, because I think it ends up being a really great way of as a lead in. I think when students often think of admissions colleges, they either think that we're the people that like to say no. And there's a bunch of us that bicker around a table that try to find flaws in students. That's certainly not the case. I know in many cases, one, of course, we are looking for academic preparation, every college is. But I think what a lot of students don't realize is that admissions offices also are key facets in how we build communities on campus. And every college campus has a different community. I know for us at St. Mary's College of Maryland, when we're reading applications, it's not just looking at the best GPAs and the best test scores, because there have been times where those students that might have had outstanding, almost perfect marks that we've held back for interviews because we couldn't tell that they would actually add anything positive to the community, or we would be a good community fit for them just because of some of the unique cultural facets that we do have on campus. So I would say for me, and I know when I've been overseeing my committees that have been reading applications, I know the things that we really look forward to is that students have done their research at St. Mary's to find out. We have an ethos called the St. Mary's Way, and we're not looking for students to literally regurgitate, our ethos and put it in an essay that says, I'm just like this, I'm the perfect kid for St. Mary's. It's really seeing, can we see that you threaded in your values, the types of activities that you did, the story that your essay might have had as part of your own personal background and history as to how you may be a good fit, any obstacles that you might have overcome that other well-resourced peers might have had a different experience, and really seeing if you're very deliberate in really thinking about us as being a good fit for you, and really thinking about who you are as a person and how you can meld within those communities. Because I can tell you, all of you have tons of options to go to college. I can guarantee each of you can probably get into, whether you know it or not, probably 2,000 schools. But it's really going in and really thinking beyond just that level of your academic credentials and really finding out where you're going to fit in those communities. And admissions offices love seeing that there is a deliberacy in you going through and finding, is that school a good fit for you?
Thank you. Grace, the next question is for you. It's one that was submitted in advance, but I think it also kind of picks up on a question that came in through the Q&A. It's, what should I do to participate in, what should I do or participate in to increase my odds of being accepted into a good college? And then the question in the Q&A says, how do I stand out the most in college applications? So similar questions.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to unpack this question by saying, I would like us to reframe what we think of as a good college. So ultimately, I think that all colleges that are members of groups like the Coalition are good colleges because they serve students well, they graduate students on time with a low cost or debt-free or low cost burden in terms of student debt, and generally are really committed to making sure that students have a great experience. I think that a lot of students really focus on colleges like mine, which are, highly selective colleges or ranked very highly in the United States, in thinking of what makes quote unquote a good college. She was a great college, right? But I also think that my colleagues all represent really wonderful colleges, and I hope that everybody will take the time to think not just about where does the school's name, does it look good on a bumper sticker, what is the US News ranking, but what does it mean for me in terms of my fit? I know Chelsea mentioned that earlier in Chelsea's response, thinking about like, what am I looking for in a college experience and how is that school going to match those interests for me? That is something that I think goes really well into thinking about what a good college is for you. Ultimately, though, I know the actual question that most people are asking is, what does it take to stand out in a very highly selective college's applicant pool? Even though I know that selectivity and what it means to be good are not necessarily the same. I think that it's important for students to understand that we're not looking for you to all converge on one exact type of person. Most students who are successful in highly selective college applicant pools have performed very strongly in school in the curriculum that is the most rigorous that's available to you. So we do not, and I actually see a question in the chat too about whether or not, do colleges see AP or Cambridge exams or other kinds of things as the most rigorous? Realistically, we're not trying to compare students across different environments in terms of saying like, you should have done something that you don't have access to. But if your school offers an AP curriculum, if your school offers IB, if your school offers some type of advanced coursework, seeing you take that on and be successful in that can help students, I think, to find more success in highly selective college applicant pools, just based on our understanding of your readiness. We don't want you to drive yourself nuts. So, you don't need to take AP Spanish and AP French at the same time just to say that you did it. But we are typically applicant pools that have students who have had a high level of high school rigor and are ready to jump right into a high level of college rigor. In terms of activities, I generally just encourage students to be involved in something that you like. So there is no right or wrong activity. There's no right combination of enough volunteering and also playing the tuba and also having a grandmother that assures you a spot at a highly selective college. Generally, we are looking to create well-rounded applicant pools, which sometimes can mean that some students themselves are well-rounded, but also can mean that some students have very strong individual talents in an area that's important to them. So not everybody needs to be well-rounded for us to have a group of people that's well-rounded. And the best way for us to find out how to craft that community is going to be to take a look at all of the candidates that we have and see who sparkles in terms of what their activity and what their involvement has looked like, and to start putting that puzzle together for us. So if you're somebody who loves to volunteer, keep doing it. If you have a job that you are committed to, awesome, tell us about it. If you have a talent or skill in a particular area like music or sports, go ahead, keep pursuing it and tell us why you'd like to bring that to a college community. At highly selective colleges, sometimes all of this is still not going to make it happen. And I don't want anyone to set themselves up to think that they've failed if, because you follow my advice, you then don't wind up getting into a very highly selective colleges. the vast majority of the candidates in our applicant pools have a lot of similar qualifications like this. You haven't done anything wrong if you do not get into a highly selective college, and making sure that, you know, you are pursuing things because you like them and for yourself, sometimes both shines to us more, and just generally make sure that you're ready to be successful and know yourself and know who you are and what you want out of college, whether or not you go to a school like WashU, or you're attending one of our awesome peers that's here, who all have a range of selection rates and levels of opportunity for students. So I hope that helps. I know that's not a correct concrete answer, but anybody that tells you that there's a formula for how you're going to get into highly selective college is making stuff up. So I'm not going to make stuff up.
Thank you for not making stuff up. Grace touched on activities in there, and I know that that's a popular question. Lots of folks are wondering, what activities should I do? Could I do? Brandy, I'm wondering if you could shed some more light on that for us. How do colleges view extracurriculars that are academic, but not, and this was a specific, very specific question about extracurriculars, but not exactly aligned with the major that they're applying to. So for example, physics extracurriculars while applying for business. Any insight on that?
Right. I feel like Grace really did a great job touching on that, and the fact that please do not go get involved in something because you think it's going to look good on your college application. We're looking for authenticity, and your extracurriculars really tell us who you are as a person, and whether or not you would be a good fit for our university at our campus community. So again, you know, and not only that, but I would say physics and business, you know, there might be threads of commonality that we see that maybe you don't see, because when I see that, I think physics, that's math-based. If you're looking for a concentration in accounting for business, I see a math theme there. So that would tell me, oh, this person is very mathematically inclined. Your grades would probably then also show that when I'm looking at your transcript. So again, there might be a theme that we see, but don't do it for the sake of doing it. This is about authenticity.
Thank you for that. Another kind of part of the application that we often receive questions about is the essay. And so Chelsea, can you talk a bit about the best way to approach your college essay, and also a little bit about what you're looking for when you read? So are you looking for creativity, writing style, authenticity? What matters in the essay?
Yeah, so I'll touch a little bit upon maybe kind of just starting your college essay and what are the kind of best ways to approach that. Definitely approach with an open mind that this is going to take some time. This is not just going to be a one time where you sit, write your essay, and you submit it and you are done, because you definitely are going to need to go through a couple of drafts and maybe also a couple of different topics that you select or choose. At the end of the day, we want you to feel confident and proud about what you're submitting, but taking the time to really think about what it is that you want to share with us. I always say that the essays and all the writing that students do is truly the place where I feel like students have the most control over their entire application. You get to select what you get to share with us, and you really do have a lot of freedom and that ability to add that creativity into your essay. Definitely not talking about, you know, from the moment you were born up until the 17, 18 years in your life, really thinking about sharing with us a photo and not the entire photo album, whether that's a moment in your life, whether that's, you know, a split second, whether that's someone who's really impacted your life, making sure that you have a set focus and aren't just also like listing a bunch of different things or a bunch of different extracurriculars that you're maybe involved in. We have, you know, spaces and other parts of the application where you get to do that. So you know, definitely taking your time to, you know, share with us ways in which you've grown, maybe changed. You can also, it's a place where you can also share with something that is new about you, whether that's a skill, a passion, an interest. Again, it's the place where you have the most freedom to be able to take that in any creative way. Kind of thinking about us as admission officers and what it is that we look for in your essays. We definitely are looking to just get a sense of who you are in that essay. You know, personality traits, creativity, really adding your voice is very important for us. I love essays that can make me laugh. If you're a humorous person, I would expect your writing to be that way. At Oxy, we have the opportunity to get to read every single one of the essays, so we have that time. Other colleges may not, but they definitely will get a sense of who you are if you're able to add your own flavor into your writing portions as well. At Oxy and lots of other selective institutions are also looking at writing writing skills and basic writing abilities from their students as well. Oxy is a very writing heavy institution, so just making sure, again, you've had a couple drafts of your essay, had someone look that over, reading your essay out loud, whether it's to yourself or to someone else, is always a great suggestion to also not catch those mistakes, but also make sure that someone else knows and has that tone and that feel like this is something that I would hear you sharing about as well.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A that kind of touch on the process of applying. And Grace, I'm wondering if you could help answer those. So one is, how does early action work? What is it? Are you able to apply to multiple places with early action? Can you break down kind of that type of applying for students? And also there's a second question that says, do early action applicants have higher chance of getting admitted? So any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so there are really 3 different ways that students can tend to apply early to colleges. And the college is going to choose which ones they offer. So this is going to be my first of the it depends answers, when I'm going to encourage you to look really specifically at the types of colleges or the individual colleges you're thinking about applying to. But some schools offer early action, which means that you apply early, usually by around November 1st to the November 15th range. Sometimes there's a little bit of difference in individual schools there. Early action is not binding and not restrictive. You can apply to as many early action colleges as will have you, as long as you are ready to put forward a strong application that you think represents your best work by that earlier time frame. And you are not obligated to attend that school if you are admitted. So that's early action. There is a process called single choice or restrictive early action that some schools will practice, by which you're not obligated to attend that school, but they are going to ask you specifically to hold on it and say, please only apply to this college, or you can apply to this college and like your big home flagship institution. So like you can apply to Harvard early action, restrictive early action, and also say you're a resident of the great state of Arkansas. If there's a scholarship deadline at the University of Arkansas that you need to meet, you can apply there, but you're not applying to MIT and you're not applying to Stanford and you're not applying to other colleges, right? So that's restrictive early action. That's a policy practice by some schools. There's also a process called early decision, which is a similar time frame. You are really only going to apply to one early decision school because that early decision commitment is you saying, if I get into this school, I'm showing up on your campus next year. I'm done applying to other colleges and I'm making this commitment upfront to you that you are my absolute top choice and this is where I want to go. And thus, it would not be feasible for you to get multiple decisions from multiple early decision colleges, nor ethical to do that. And that is a policy that exists at some institutions, including my own. So early action, totally open. Restrictive early action, restricted, but also open. Early decision, boom, going there if admitted. The differences in acceptance rates from different schools in their early programs can vary. It's going to vary from school to school. At WashU, we do admit a slightly higher proportion of our early decision candidates than we do our regular decision candidates. However, I will also say those students who come to us early and raise their hand and say, this is my top choice institution, tend to be extremely qualified students who we know are really excited to be here. And we are not making compromises on the types of qualifications, the grades, the experiences, the level of writing that we're hoping to see students have. So I tend to describe early decision for students in many cases as not easier, but sometimes just less hard, right? So it's not that we're relaxing our admission standards or taking students who are Hail Marying it and saying, aha, I would not have been a competitive candidate at this school, but suddenly because I applied early decision, I am. In most cases, it's just an opportunity for us to take your application earlier than a lot of other students in a slightly smaller applicant pool. And for us to know, hey, this student's really serious about this particular institution. So I really encourage you to think very carefully about where and how you choose to apply early. Again, just because you've chosen to apply early decision, particularly at a highly selective college, does not mean that if you are extremely outside of the range of the students that we tend to admit, that things are suddenly happening. We admit a reasonably wider range of students than most people might think. But you should think very seriously about how you approach those early decision or early action options. Knowing that some of those will have a little bit more of a restrictive practice than others. Some of them may create a little bit more opportunity than others, but it's not necessarily a total slam dunk just because you were ready to submit by November 1st or November 15th at a particular school that, aha, I am suddenly admitted. So I hope that's helpful. It's a process by which you really need to think about where your values are and what that fit and match looks like, in addition to deciphering some of those different policies to make sure you really understand, is this a totally open process and I'm just getting it done early, or am I really committing myself to going to that school? And if so, we really want to make sure this is the top place that you really see yourself.
Thank you. Ryan, a hot topic over the past couple of years around testing, SATs, ACTs. Student wants to know whether they should go ahead and take those tests or if they should just be looking for test optional schools to apply to. What's your advice for students trying to make that decision?
Sure. And this is a hot button issue. And I would say, kind of echoing, Grace's advice on looking at admissions policies. I think if you are slowly narrowing a set of schools, really understanding what the testing policies are like for those institutions and understanding, are they completely test optional in the sense that a school's not going to look at a test at any part of the process, or if schools might be looking at testing for things like scholarshiping or even class placement, if you are to enroll at a school. I usually encourage students, I think it's worth, if you have the means and ability to do so, certainly sit for an exam. I think there are benefits to it, even if when you take the test, you can select that no college will receive your scores. So it's not one of those things. I know back when I took the test, it was you took the test and you wrote down the colleges you want to receive the scores. Don't have to do that, just so that you do have the score for your own reference. And then as you're going through the process and you're really looking at your schools, really understanding what are each school's testing expectations, because in some cases a school might be test optional, like I said, but maybe there is a major where they might encourage students to submit a test score. I usually, will kind of go and say that, if you're looking at different testing options between the SAT or the ACT, I know the tests used to be more significantly different, I think, than they are today. But, I'll always recommend, if you love the sciences, you really enjoy biology, chemistry, physics, I strongly encourage considering taking the ACT, even if you're on the coasts, just because it is I don't want to say it's a more tested subject, but it's weighted differently into the composite score a little bit differently. So that's where I would encourage everyone to take the score, at least just to have that test in your back pocket. You may actually end up exceeding your score expectations than maybe what you were expecting, and then just sort of keep it in your back pocket if you may need it.
Thank you for that advice. And Ryan, I wonder if we can stick with you just for a moment, kind of related to this topic. Some students and a student in the chat is wondering about the impact of COVID on their educational experience, that it's been challenging to be, affected by lockdown and maybe not have great internet connection. How are colleges considering that experience today?
Sure. I can say for our review process at St. Mary's, I would say that this group of students that's entering college now were the ones that were the most affected by the pandemic, in the sense of just the timing in which their education, if you're in the United States, the timing in which their education was disrupted, and then kind of looking at the impact of what maybe students have seen returning to in-person learning, and maybe differences in expectations that they may have had during the middle of the pandemic. So I can say for at least my institution, especially regarding standardized tests, we are fully test optional for all pieces of the process. However, if we did notice that there were significant deviations in a student's academic record, we actually held back on decisions and requested additional information like interviews, mid-year grades for their senior year, just so that we were confident that what the students had on their academic record adequately reflected their ability to do the work in school. I know for other students, depending on severity of their circumstances, especially if they were studying outside of the country, I've worked with international students that essentially have been unable to go to school for 2 years. And so I think our concern, especially at that point, it's Unfortunately, really looking at sort of this gaps in the curriculum, if they were significant enough that there are no records and they can say that school was closed. I mean, we had to sort of kind of look and take a hard choice as to whether or not we felt that the student would have been adequately prepared if we had admitted them. But I would say now that we're a little bit past the pandemic, I think we're already making plans, especially for the next group of students, and especially working very closely with our faculty members in academic affairs and their own professional development centers to get them to understand that, especially students when they're starting in their lower division courses, that they may need to not change the curriculum in any way, but maybe think about their pedagogical approach given the experiences of these students.
Great, thank you. Switching gears a little bit to affordability and financial aid. Brandy, we had a question come in advance about how to go about looking for scholarships and just in general, how do students apply for financial aid?
Absolutely. So for our domestic students here in the US, the FAFSA, right? That's how you're going to apply for your federal financial aid. I don't want to speak on behalf of all universities, but a lot of universities do require the FAFSA for it to even be considered for merit-based scholarships. So it's really important for you to understand, talk to that financial aid office at the university or college you're looking at to see what their requirements are. Obviously, for need-based aid, they will need that FAFSA. When you're thinking about scholarships, your very first stop is the university financial aid office or financial assistance office. That's where everyone should go to find out what are the merit-based, need-based scholarships that are offered at that institution. Your second stop, and these are all stops you need to make, as your high school counselor or your TRIO counselor. Lots of local businesses, civic groups give scholarships to local high schools. So it's really important that you connect with these individuals because they're usually the gatekeeper of that information. Also, if you're the university you're attending has a local booster club, a lot of times they will be giving out scholarships to new students as well. And your high school counselor or the university should be able to share that information. I've also had students whose parents, employers give very good scholarships. A lot of times they're the only student that is going to college that year out of all the employees. And so the scholarship is an automatic given to them. So that's a really great resource to also look at. And that's at your local level. At your state level, sorry, former financial aid director here, the state finance authority of your state, the states that you live in might have a finance authority. And that is a great resource because they will usually combine all of those scholarship opportunities into one website and place to go to. So it would definitely suggest that you check that out. They are usually located within the State Department of Education or the state's higher education agency. And then finally, there is a great resource on the U.S. Department of Labor. It's a free scholarship search tool. It's called the Career One Stop, I believe. Just Google the Department of Labor free application. There's a lot of really great scholarships that out there, and you're thinking, wow, it's nationwide. There's gonna be so many people apply to it. Some of them are so particular. It would probably be a small applicant pool. So if you actually qualify for them, you're going into this major, you're doing it in this area, this is what you want to do with the degree, there's a good chance that you could get those scholarships.
Awesome. I just want to add on to Brandy because she made an important note when she talked about your state higher education finance authority. And I think this is important because every state that you live in could be different. So for example, in my state of Maryland, if you're a student that might be unable to file the FAFSA, we do have a special application called the MIFSA. I know lots of consonants, lots of Fs. That can allow students that are ineligible to file the FAFSA to actually be considered for additional state grants that could substitute for some of the programs that a student might not be eligible for through the Federal Department of Education. I would say this is where we go back to, as Grace, the it depends question, because unfortunately every state is different. But that's why I really wanted to highlight, visit your state finance authority, because every state has some version of it, and you'd be surprised what kind of programs could be available there.
Thank you both for that. That's great. Chelsea, what if students are looking for additional help? You know, we can see here tonight, there's a lot of great questions. There's so many more topics that we won't be able to cover, and students need some support going through the college application process. Where do you advise that they turn?
Yeah, I mean, I would say admission officers are great people to ask questions. I'm sure between the three of us, we have a lot of years under our belt, even in different fields like financial aid. So I would definitely suggest reaching out to an admission officer. but always making sure that if it is a specific question for an institution, making sure you check a website as well. A lot of times answers can be found simply on college's website. So always kind of doing research beforehand, but definitely more specific questions can be sent to different admission offices if you are looking for specific answers to that college. I would also say anyone else who may have had some sort of higher education experience. A lot of times I know I work with a lot of underrepresented students who work a lot of times with their teachers. You know, it's an English teacher. It could be, you know, an older sibling to just get advice on what that kind of possible higher education might look like. So always just kind of keeping in mind the people that you have around you, and also maybe potentially looking for community-based organizations in your local area that a lot of times help students with that kind of college access work, especially for, you know, big public high schools like in Los Angeles, where, you know, the caseload is just so large that a lot of times students want that a little bit more individualized college access resource as well.
Thanks. Grace, going back to the topic of affordability, financial aid in that vein, can you talk more? We touched on this in the beginning, but application fee waivers, how do they work? What should students do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the great news about the coalition application is that it is really easy to get your application fee waived to apply to coalition colleges. If you meet a number of different or one of many different characteristics, sometimes it's coming from a lower income family, sometimes it's being the first in your family to graduate from college, sometimes it's being in a situation where maybe your parent or guardian has recently had a change of job or a job loss, or just paying for a college application isn't feeling affordable right now. You can check a box on the application that requests a fee waiver. I will also say that the vast majority of colleges are happy to engage with students who might need a fee waiver that's processed in a different way. And so if you email us when you're applying to college, if that barrier for you choosing to apply is the application fee, I know that my staff are absolutely happy to help students waive that application fee if you don't qualify at a top level for some of the reasons that the application fee might be waived. There are even some colleges that will waive your application fee purely because you've chosen to apply for need-based financial aid. So most of the time, you don't have to do a ton of raising your hand to say, oh, this doesn't feel right to me. But even if you do, please know we're happy to keep that information, you know, between us, confidential, no shame in it. If we can help you with waiving that application fee, we want to do that. So reach out to that college too. Last but not least, if your school has a high school counselor that you've worked with, whether or not that's somebody that's really specific to helping you with your college applications, or someone that works with you generally on your schedule, if your school doesn't have someone that specifically works on applying to college, a lot of times those folks can also reach out to our offices on your behalf to request that we waive your application fee, and occasionally also have some general fee waivers through some national organizations that help us to understand that you might be able to benefit from a fee waiver to apply to our colleges. So lots and lots of steps, but pretty much no college in the United States wants to sit back and say, aha, I don't want students to apply if they can't afford that application fee. We're usually very, very happy to waive it as long as, you know, there's a reasonable reason, and most reasons are reasonable.
Thank you for that. A question in the chat, Chelsea, I'm wondering if you can help us with this one. A student is asking, should you mention your religious practices or experiences to non-religious schools? And they've heard varying thoughts that it's sometimes not something you'd want to provide to a secular school, or do schools with a religious affiliation want to hear about religious experiences?
Yeah, I would say, you know, if religious practices or experiences for you is important, it's a part of, you know, those interests, those passions, then feel free to share that. I think especially schools who may not be affiliated with a religion are just excited to get to know what students are doing in their free time. And a lot of times we'll have clubs and organizations that are affiliated with different religions. So again, as long as it's something that's important to you and you feel like it shares another part of who you are, I would definitely feel like students should express themselves again in their college application.
Amanda, can I jump in and also add an answer to that question?
of
I agree
course.
absolutely with everything that Chelsea has said. And in addition, I also wanted to share that there are a wide variety of colleges and universities in the United States that don't have an official religious affiliation, but where religious students are very well supported. You know, at WashU, for example, we have programming and opportunity for a really wide range of student religious interests, but we have historically been particularly very good at serving our Jewish and Jewish identifying students. And we are not officially a Jewish institution. But I think it's really important for students to understand that sometimes peering in a little bit more to a college can help you to understand, even at the top level. You know, we are not, Brandy, I'm gonna throw it to you, the University of the Incarnate Word, right? We don't have a religious mission in our title. We can still have a lot of opportunity for students who observe a religious practice to be able to celebrate that with us. So keep diving in and looking in, and recognize that, like, just because we might not be a religious institution does not mean you're not going to be supported, and certainly doesn't mean that we're not interested in learning more about how that might be important to you, if that's something you want to express on your college application.
Thank you both. Another question came in advance that really gets at the experience of being in college. Ryan, this student is asking you to kind of discuss what the degrees of staff and support personnel in your school's Office of Disability or Accessibility.
Sure. And I'm gonna answer this question, I think, in a little bit more broad strokes, I think, as to more advice to kind of approach the process. I think I want to start by saying, if any school is a coalition member, you know, they do care about making sure that all students have equal opportunity for success, including those especially that might be neurodivergent or historically might have felt that higher education practices that would have excluded those students. So I do want to say that if you're looking at a coalition member, I think when you consider us, I think certainly we are really looking at angling towards the right culture. I usually describe this process as you're looking at kind of two things. One of them is procedural and the other is cultural. So when I say procedural, I mean in terms of what is the ability and the resources that the college has that might be able to meet your unique learning needs. If you're currently have an IEP at your school, and in some states, in some cases, and in some states, if you have a 504, two different things, they don't automatically follow you to college. They don't. And even when you are in college, the nature of the law is that colleges need to make reasonable accommodations in order to meet them. But depending on what your specific need might be, the college might not be fully equipped or have the resources to actually meet your need in the way that you may need. So for example, at my school, we are really unique. We're a public school in Maryland. We're an honors college. Average class size is 10. And so we get a lot of applications from students that are really seeking to need that small learning environment. But we don't have the resources to maybe accommodate students that might have come, that depending on what their unique circumstance might be, if they've come from a very, very, very specialized school that can meet certain needs, we just might not have the capacity to meet those students in those ways. Other institutions, even very large institutions, have varying degrees of resources. And so I always advise students, if you already know that you have a particular need, whether it might be something to assist you in the classroom, or you might have an outside, say, maybe it could be a health condition, maybe it could be an ADA issue, in getting around, really ask the offices directly, like, what is your capacity to meet and exceed this requirement, so that as you're going through and developing your list, you're going in with the right expectations of what's there, instead of getting admitted, getting excited, getting through the process, you getting served from a compliance perspective, and then realize that this is not an institution that can maybe support your needs. Because unfortunately, every institution will be different in this way. So I say that's the procedural part of it. I think admissions offices, depending on the institution that you're at, you're going to have a wide variety of students, of staff that are able to talk about these issues. Some colleges might have institutional policies or internal policies where they'll just direct you to an office of accessibility services. Don't take it as they're just pushing you around. In some cases, we're working with very specific policy language, and it's just making sure that you get a very, very consistent message. Now, culture. So let's get the bad, ugly stuff out of the way. Culture. If you are a student that is going through and kind of navigating that process, I think the next part is really seeing, if you're looking at maybe say non-coalition schools, you know, is there a culture of inclusivity and maybe celebrating students who might be neurodivergent? There's a couple ways that you can look at it. You can see, is there like a club or an advocacy group that is run on campus that might help highlight those needs, even if they're really looking at advocating needs for peers? You know, if there's an office of accessibility services, offices, is it an office that's very prominent on campus, or is it something that might be hidden and tucked away? Because that too can give sort of an informal message of what the value of the school may be. And again, really, I think just approaching it with honest conversations that, outside the classroom, because you're going to be outside of the classroom 90% of the times that you're on a college, really getting an understanding of what sort of the social integration and those kind of services are like at campuses and institutions.
Thank you for that. There's a great question in the chat that is for our former financial aid director. So Brandy, if I could call on you to dive in a little bit more on financial aid. And we have a student who's asking, how could someone get into a college or university with zero means of paying for it on their own or via family? So just talk, we know that sticker price is big for colleges. So what's your advice here?
My advice is don't be discouraged. There are students every day who have zero means of going to college and they make it work. And it's because of people on these university campuses who are here to support you and help you find a way to work. It's not a one size fits all for everyone. But what I would say is sitting down with that financial aid counselor and, number one, filing your FAFSA or MISFA, or in Texas, it's a TASFA, whatever you need in order to determine what that need base is. And then looking at programming on your campus. There's a lot of work study programs, and we pay really well for students who are willing to work on campus. There's also a lot of grants. There's also research-based jobs on campus, and that's just going to help you with your studies. So what I would say is, again, not a one-size-fits-all. Sit down with that counselor and find a way, because really that might be how you find the right fit university, is talking to your financial aid offices and seeing which ones really help you figure out a way to the finish line. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. And just sticking with you for just a moment, we've had a couple of questions come in from international students wondering about college affordability. Any advice that may be different for international students?
For international students, I think I'm going to pass. Grace, you have a large international population. Yes.
So I want to be realistic with international students and say the process of being able to attend a US-based college becomes more complicated and more difficult as an international student who needs financial assistance. There are some colleges in the United States that are able to offer financial assistance to international students. The number of those schools is relatively small and tends to hit a little bit more of the highly selective school population than the more broadly admitted student population. Because international students need to be able to show that they have the funds to stay and pay for their study in the US to be able to get student visas, typically, you are either going to fall into a category of a student whose family does have the ability to pay to attend college and is comfortable doing that at the going rate for that school for all 4 years of school, or fall into a population of students who are applying for needs-based financial aid, which we offer at a small number of those colleges, but that can make the process a little bit more competitive because we often need to be aware of how much financial assistance you need before choosing to admit you. There are an even smaller, but still available, number of US colleges that do not look at an international student's ability to pay, which is a really, really wonderful opportunity for international students. And they still have the opportunity to be able to gain funding from those schools. But the typical school that is need blind, this is what we call it, need blind for international students, is a very highly selective school. So I don't want anyone to be totally discouraged by this process, but I do want to be realistic about the fact that if you are an international student who needs financial assistance to be able to study in the US, you need to declare that up front as you apply to colleges so we can make sure that we have the resources to support you. And it can make the process more competitive because we often have smaller budgets to support students who live outside of the US and our international students than we may for US-based students. It's a reality of how we balance our budgets in many cases, that many schools have more of the unlimited budget side or a much less limited budget for our US-based students than for our international students. We still take and admit students every year to WashU who are international students who need financial aid, but the number is relatively small. And for our US-based students, we don't at all have to look look at a student's ability to pay as we're making a decision. And we're able to meet 100% of the need that any student's family has at WashU and at some similar institutions, again, for our US-based students. So I'm sorry to be the downer, but I want to be realistic about some of the processes that some of our international students will face going into this process. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but it does mean that we want you to really make sure that you have a really great option in your home country that you would be happy with as you're thinking about the process of applying to US-based colleges as an international student who needs financial aid.
Thank you for that. Chelsea, there's a question in the chat, and this is one that we get fairly frequently, just breaking down understanding how admissions counselors think about dual enrollment versus AP courses. Like if you have choices in different rigorous classes, what should you be thinking about taking?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think definitely thinking about context is key, especially for institutions like Occidental and some other selective colleges that are doing holistic review processes, is that we are looking at you within the context of your high school. We are expecting you to challenge yourself. So if you do have that availability of dual enrollment, AP courses, IB curriculum, we will expect to see those and not just you taking regular classes. In terms of just thinking about the rigor and kind of what we look for students who might have that opportunity to take a multitude, I would say that the IB program just in general is considered the most rigorous, the International Baccalaureate, in which students are doing that full IB program. Again, if the IB program doesn't exist in your high school, you're not going to be penalized for that. If AP is the highest level that is, offered to you, then take some AP courses. With that being said, we don't also expect you to be taking like 9 AP courses in your senior year. Take those challenging courses in ways in which you're ready for that challenge and in areas that you feel like you're going to be successful in. Again, if dual enrollment is the highest level that's offered to you, take some dual enrollment classes. Again, I would say that students who are being offered a variety of those kind of higher level and more rigorous courses, we would expect to see those on high school transcripts. The dual enrollment courses, especially if they're taken on college campuses, at least for Oxy, definitely do stand out a little bit more to us because you've already been placed in a college campus, you're already in those classes. It's a little bit more of a college level course than maybe necessarily doing a dual enrollment just through high school.
Thank you. Brian, there's a question in the chat about a student is at a magnet high school and the program isn't in line with what they want to study in college. Does it matter? And they're also saying anything else that you're kind of looking for in our applications.
Sure. I would say for us, certainly not. I mean, I think what could happen is if you're in a magnet school and it's not a subject that you're passionate about and you find that you're not, I shouldn't say, I see this oftentimes for magnet schools in Maryland, for example, like they're going into a biomedical or a bioengineering type program, and they go in and they realize, I don't like chemistry, I don't like calculus, but they stay in the program, and then their grades might not adequately reflect their ability just because of the rigor that can be, I think, problematic when you're going through the admissions process, when you're looking at certain institutions. But for us, if you're taking advantage of all of the rigor, you're excelling in your courses, and you're articulating, your interest in your program or major, going from a specific magnet program into an unrelated program does not harm your chances for admission at all.
Thank you. So we've got just a few minutes left, and I want to have time for each of you to share your parting wisdom, your top piece of advice for the folks on the call tonight. So why don't we go ahead and go back to Chelsea and start with you.
Oh gosh. Okay. No time to think. So just kind of overall advice. I mean, I think you guys are already doing great in the fact that you're here tonight and attending a webinar in which you get to ask really any question. You're diving in and getting to connect with us already. I would say, thinking back to kind of my my college search process is really be open-minded, again, of really thinking about doing your research on different types of colleges. I mean, just in our webinar today, we have 4 very different types of colleges, but we're all just looking for you to be successful, for you to find that place in which you're going to be the best student, the best community member. So I would say, again, taking your time through this process. I know it can be stressful a lot of times, but we are here as people to reach out to as well. I will put my email and my information in the chat as well for any student who might have any follow-up questions. But I would just kind of say, you know, asking for help is never a sign of weakness. It's definitely a sign of strength, and you already diving into this type of research for something that's going to be very important. So.
You did great for having no time to prepare for that question. That was great advice. Brandy, you're next.
My advice is authenticity is really what we're looking for in the college admissions process. If I had to sum it up in one word. And the other thing is, again, I'm going to harp on this. Come visit us. Come see us, come talk to us. That is the best way for you to feel about fit of where you should be for your college journey.
Thank you. And Ryan.
Sure. I mean, I think this sounds almost absurd when we're talking about it, but enjoy the process. I think I loved my college search process so much that I entertained getting a job in this field, and I've now been in it for a decade, and I can't imagine myself doing anything else. I think, as I said before, there are probably 2,000 schools that would love to have any of you, at least in the United States, more abroad, believe it or not. Your odds are quite good. And I think really understand that every college here has produced amazing alumni that have gone on to do great things in a whole variety of fields. And so if you think about that way, the odds of you having a good fit somewhere are really high. So I'd say go about with an open mind and certainly enjoy it. I think the other part too, and this is really important, understand that the search process is iterative. And what I say that is, if you're already trying to pencil in your entire life, starting as a freshman in high school, you're probably going to go astray without even realizing it, without understanding, you know, what type of learning environment do I enjoy? What type of classroom experience do I want? Do I need faculty interaction, or can I survive in a larger area? And that's not something you're really going to understand until you've been in school for a little bit. So I'd say enjoy it. Don't rush it. And find things that you truly authentically enjoy along the way, and don't try to tailor the next couple of years of your life around this one process that will be over in 1 year and will not define the rest of your life.
Thank you for that. And Grace.
This is a hard one to go last because I feel like everybody had really great advice. That's awesome. So listen to my colleagues who already said wonderful things. I think the unique thing that I can add is I think that a lot of students in the US and abroad really will fixate on the selectivity rate of a college in terms of thinking about whether or not it's going to offer them opportunity. There are a huge range of colleges that offer a lot of opportunity. Again, 2,000 or more of those colleges would be happy to have every single student who wants to apply. So while I think that there is really incredible opportunity at WashU and schools that are similarly selective to WashU, your life is not over if you do not get in here, and you have not failed. You have not done anything wrong. We just happen to have way more students who are interested in coming here than beds in our first year residence halls. And so we're not able to offer admission to every student who would like to go here. I sit in a unique position as the director of admission here, having also worked at 2 highly selective graduate programs. I worked at Harvard Law School while I was a graduate student, and previously was the director of admissions at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, which is the #1 MBA program in the world. And generally, I would like to tell every single one of you that we admitted students to those incredibly selective, incredibly awesome graduate programs from colleges you've never heard of. And so ultimately, while there are students who will have great success and great opportunity at highly selective colleges, know that like the journey of education is kind of unending. And if you wind up at a school that is your top choice, but no one has heard of, or isn't your top choice, and you're worried that you're, limited in your opportunity, you're not. Some of the students who stand out the most to me from those applicant pools went to very small regional colleges, public flagship institutions, military academies, and schools outside of the United States. So lots of opportunity everywhere. Do not think you've done anything wrong if you are not admitted to one of the top 15 colleges in the country. Think carefully about fit and match as you choose where to apply, and have fun with the process.
Thank you all. That was amazing advice. Thanks to our students and families and counselors and all who joined us tonight and asked those great questions. We're going to close it out there, but we hope to see you at another coalition event in the future and hope you go create your SCORE account and start playing around with those tools, which we think does make the process pretty fun. So thanks to everyone. Have a great evening.